is it great to get in front of more aligned ideal clients, make an impact, build your email list, grow your following, all of those things? It totally can be, but only if that post that goes viral is hyper relevant to what you do.
Welcome to The Expansion Code. I'm Heather, and I could not be more excited to finally launch this podcast. This is the space where we dive into all things business, growth, leadership, and team expansion. I am really passionate about building something bigger than myself, sharing knowledge, and creating opportunities for others to thrive. I started solo, and now I lead a team of over 50, so trust me, I know the highs and the challenges and the incredible moments that come with scaling a business. Throughout this podcast, I'll be sharing insights, strategies, and conversations with some truly incredible guests. We are going to cover everything from marketing and leadership to mindset shifts and business expansion. So my goal is to give you real actionable takeaways that you can apply to your own journey. Let's dive in, learn together, and unlock what's next. Welcome to The Expansion Code. Hello, my friends. Welcome to another episode of The Expansion Code with myself, Heather Dick, your host. I am so happy to be here today. Today we have Jodie Brown. She is a very dear friend of mine. We've even traveled to Italy before. And she is a marketing guru, a marketing mentor manager. She is a content branding manager. She is an expert in all of these fields, including social media. It is so nice to have you, Jodie.
Thank you so much for the lovely intro, and thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Me too. I feel like we have, a very large bucket of topics that we could talk about. But one thing that modern day businesses I find are really struggling with, and I even struggle with it, having multiple businesses myself, is social media.
Mhm.
And there's so much chatter about what the algorithm is doing and what's working, and hashtags don't even matter anymore, and all of this stuff. And I think that it'd be really nice for us to break down a lot of those myths today for our listeners.
Right. Yeah, I think honestly with social media, there's so much information, there's so much noise, and there's so many things that people have, I think because our society is so social media obsessed, people expect that with no training and no, background skills in marketing, that they should be experts. They should know how to market their
Mm.
businesses. And I think that this is one of the biggest frustrations with my clients, no matter what level of business they're in. Even the content creators
Mm.
are really, there's so much conversation surrounding like, how do I actually get results from social? And so I'm really excited to break this down. I actually love social media. I've used it to build multiple businesses and get really great results for my clients. And I'm excited to kind of dive into what has allowed me to keep a really healthy relationship with it, as
Mm.
well as achieve great results.
Oh, I love that. Wow, that is exceeding my expectations already, girlfriend. I think that, especially because I'm an 80s baby, my parents grew a business in the 80s. They didn't have social media then. They did it all by referrals. They did it by traditional print ads, commercials, things like that. And so I do think that there is a mix of ways that we can add five-star service with social media presence. So as a business owner, what would you say is the number one mistake that people make with social media nowadays?
So we've kind of covered that a little bit. And I think the biggest mistake has nothing to do with actually what you're posting. I think
Mm.
it has to do with consumption and the goal a little bit. So because there's, like I said, we have so much access, and when we're using social media as entrepreneurs, the algorithm is smart. It knows what you want to see, right? So if you're consuming content that's educational on social media, what do you think the algorithm's going to serve you more of?
Mm.
More opinions, more ideas, more education, right? And so I think a lot of the time people get so caught up on the tactical side of social media, AKA like what to post, what should I be, like what format should I be using, how often should I be posting? Predominantly, a lot of the questions that I get when I start working with people are really logistical things like that. What time do I post? How many times do I post? All of those types of things. However, we're skipping over often the foundational part. And so, something that I'll say a lot, and this is something I talk about constantly with my clients on my podcast, on social media, is you want to create for your audience, create for your ideal clients, and optimize for the algorithm. And the number
Mm.
one mistake I see is people looking for ways to almost hack the algorithm and post for the algorithm instead of the business they're trying to build.
Oh, that is so smart. And I think that because it's this mythical creature that there was no playbook on it and no one actually knows. They just make these rules up. So then, I see all the time, I grew my followers to 50,000 by posting 2 reels a day and consistently doing 5 stories a day. And it's like, but then we had, the ad workshop that we did the other day together. Um, Stephanie was saying that she posts once a week and does ads.
You know, as someone who at this point, so I started my marketing business 5 years ago full time. And as someone who has now published thousands of pieces of content across dozens of different accounts, I can tell you the one thing that is a rule and is consistent is that there is no one thing that works on every single Instagram account.
Mm,
It doesn't exist. And even it was really funny actually. I had a call with Instagram. I think it was probably about a year ago. They were offering calls to some of their users to kind of talk about the algorithm and be able to basically ask them all these questions. And I recorded the call. I actually created a podcast episode about the results of that call. And I asked them because they were like, oh, I was like, okay, break down to me, like, how does this reach thing happen? Like, tell me how, when, a piece of content goes out, how does Instagram decide whether to distribute that? And the person I was talking to was like, okay, well, it goes to a portion of your followers. And then if they engage with it, then it pushes it out wider, which is, I think, consistent with what most of us have heard and what we all, speak to.
right.
And so they were actually in my account. So I was like, okay, fair. Let me break down to you a couple posts that got really high engagement to my existing followers and then never got pushed out. And her response was, well, yeah, I mean, it's a computer program. I mean, none of them are perfect. And so this is what I think is so funny. We put so much like stock in this algorithm, and it's like almost people talk about it like it's like the oracle of success when it comes to marketing and when it comes to building a business. And the reality is that it is a piece of software, hundreds of pieces of software that are just as prone to glitches and issues than anything else. So if you're beating yourself up and telling yourself that your content is terrible, and you're getting upset that you're not getting hundreds of thousands of views on every post, can we optimize? Of course. But at the end of the day, I've replaced my full-time behind the chair income with less than 10,000 followers without a whole ton of reach. Like,
Hmm.
it's not linked to your business goals in the same way that we think it is.
Yeah. One thing I remember our social media manager for Blush had said to me years ago, because I would obsess, right? I'm like, well, we don't have this many followers and we're only getting this many likes. And she said, those likes are not dollars.
Mhm.
And those people, and especially now, I mean, this is another myth that I'll have you debunk if you know. People aren't even liking anything anymore.
Yeah.
Like it's becoming a thing and they're viewing but not liking.
Yeah, and I foresee that actually getting even more prevalent now that Instagram has added a tab which shows you what all of your friends are liking and commenting
Right.
on. And so I've seen a lot of conversations around like this is like people are feeling as though their privacy is being violated a little bit,
Right.
which I think is going to lead to even less engagement. And Instagram is, I think, really combating that by changing their distribution to an extent. Playtime, watch time is a really big one. And so, kind of more like YouTube, we're also switching to more interest based algorithms, right? Like TikTok, for example. They don't serve you based on who you follow, they serve you based on what the interest is. And so, the downside to that is a lot of people are really frustrated because it's not as easy to reach your followers, but the plus side is that you do have opportunity to get in front of new people more than ever with relevancy.
Right.
Um, and like I said, like I still have clients. Like I think a lot of the conversation is very doom and gloom around social media. I have a client that I think we posted 2 days ago, and they've already had hundreds and hundreds of comments to trigger a ManyChat opt-in for their email list.
Wow.
Name another organic strategy that you can get hundreds of email list opt-ins for free.
Yeah.
There isn't one.
There isn't one. It
No.
it so I'm actually gonna talk about a post that you had made the other day about, because you are working with educators a lot now, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. And do you wanna talk about that just a little bit so that listeners understand what you do with that?
Yeah, so I have two different businesses. One, I work with most creative entrepreneurs, which is on the agency side. And then I do also mentoring. I do in salon classes as well, just because I'm a beauty industry baby born and raised. My mom was a salon owner, can't let it go. But what I realized actually after my first retreat in 2023 is that there's so many incredible leaders in the beauty industry, and with the unique skill set and with the unique knowledge, and honestly with the fact that like in my first year of business as an educator, I was already working with other educators behind the scenes on creating their content, on strategizing on launches, all of the things. And I kind of reached an inflection point in 2023 where I was like, I'm one person.
Right.
I didn't want to I mean, I'm not, I have a team
Of
as
course.
well, small team, but I didn't feel like I could be as pulled in all of these directions. So I really wanted to focus in on creating my ripple effect in the industry by empowering all of the incredible leaders who are out there working with the stylist and the salon owner. And so that's kind of behind a bit of a pivot into, and not even a pivot, just a public facing remessaging essentially, because I was already doing it behind the scenes.
Right.
So that's kind of what went into that.
The post that we're talking about was, you were saying that if your marketing strategy isn't working anymore as an educator, here's why. And so you said there's a lot of noise on social media, and what you're searching, you see, or what you are, you see essentially.
Mhm, mhm.
So what would you say has changed? And for someone that's an educator or someone selling an online course or selling online services, what would you say has changed and why are they seeing less engagement in sales?
So this is a concept called market sophistication, and we're seeing
Okay.
it in play, and we're seeing it at an accelerated rate because of social media. However, it's always been a thing. So the example that I always use is like the very first chocolate bar, right? Which was, I think, in like, I don't know, I'm going to completely mess up this date, but it was like 1942 or something. Maybe it was before that. Either way, the first commercially sold chocolate bar, right? All that company had to do is say, here's a chocolate bar. And people were like eating that up, right? They're like, it was the first one. It was the only one they could buy. Their
Mhm.
marketing did not have to be super clever. It
Right.
just had to be like, here is this thing, you can buy it. And people went nuts, right?
Right.
Once other chocolate bars started coming on the scene, all of a sudden people have more options. And so we have to differentiate a little bit, right? And so, along with that consumer behavior, now, I mean, decades and decades later, that a lot goes into bringing a new product to market.
Totally.
Right? You have to have a really strong, unique value proposition in order to stand out because the marketplace is crowded. So in 2020, we had a unique kind of thing because people had more time, right? So
Right.
creators had more time to bring these things to market and actually do the work, and people had a lot more time to consume. And so it was like this perfect storm where you could get away with kind of mediocre marketing.
Right.
Like it was kind of that presenting phase, like, okay, let's, announce this. And if you had a semi-warm audience and you had people who were interested and they wanted it, then they were able to quickly identify, okay, this is exactly what I'm going to get. Fast forward a little bit, there is still massive demand for education. There will never not be demand for education. People are looking for it still, and there are tons of wildly successful educators, even that have entered the game in the last 2 years. The difference is that we need to be very, very mindful of communicating the value, and
Mm.
not just like, I know a lot of people say, like, oh, you get one to one calls. why should we care? Like,
Mm.
what is that one-to-one call doing for me? What is the benefit for my business? And so I think that's the biggest thing behind market sophistication. And this 1,000% applies to the service beauty industry as well. There's more talented stylists and more beautiful salons than there ever has been,
Mhm.
right? So, what is that unique value proposition, and how are you bringing that forward in your marketing?
It's so true, Jody. And I have seen, we all have seen the build your six-figure business. I'm going to take you from 0 to 5 and you stay at home mommies, and it's like this is it's noisy, it's disingenuine. It doesn't seem like this you actually want me to succeed.
Right.
And those sales pages that we see, they're impactful because of course you're still providing something, as you say. You're not selling, you're providing a solution to something that someone
For sure.
needs. Um, but it's too much. And we can't just keep copying what's been done over and over and over again because like you said, there's a lot of chocolate bars out there. Great
Yeah.
analogy, by the way. I'm sure it was Willy Wonka, but um but it's so true because and that's the same thing with my parents' business. Auto body shop in 1984, probably one of 5 in the city, and now there's a plethora of these
For sure.
businesses.
Right.
And w business owners, I suspect, are getting frustrated, like you say, overwhelmed. I'm doing all this stuff. I'm doing all these things that I see other people doing that they're successful with, but there's just no differentiation between the companies almost.
And I want to say too, like, I have so much compassion for the business owner when it comes to this topic because it is a whole other skill set. And I think at the end of the day, a lot of the reason that we see, generic messaging and all these things is because people are tired. Like, they're like,
Yeah.
I already built the damn thing. Like, I don't want to have to put in all this time to like understand my marketing and messaging and all of these things. But I think where we need to change the narrative is like, this is what's required now. And the other thing, too, that I like to think about is that when you put the time into the foundations, not only are you going to be able to communicate better what you do, you're going to be able to create better products and services because you more deeply understand your target audience or your ideal client, however you want to phrase that. So I do think that, like I said, I have so much compassion, but the flip side of this is when you do the foundational work and when you actually get really clear on your brand and not just your brand colors, like your brand, what it means to your client. Remember, it's how other people perceive you, not how you perceive yourself. Once you do all that foundational work, you're not going to get as thrown when changes happen. Like, and even with like going back to social media and the content side of things, if you are really clear on what your content is doing and like the purpose and the message and what's going to resonate and the goal with each piece of content, if Instagram all of a sudden says, oh, you need to be posting 3-minute reels instead of 1-minute reels, or you want to test different strategies, then you're not going to have to reinvent the wheel. You're just going to have to change up your delivery a little bit. And I think
Mhm.
that's so much easier than if you build your whole strategy around what's trending or what's working right now. Then when that goes away, you're going to feel as though the rug is ripped out from under you, right?
Yeah. I have 2 things to say. So for someone that I mean, I've worked with you a lot on a personal and a business level, and you've been amazing. So you say foundation. So if someone doesn't know or hasn't worked with you, what would you say the foundations of a business are?
So when it comes to speaking specifically to marketing, the brand, like your brand is so much more than, like I said before, just like the colors or brand voice. I feel like there's a lot of really kind of shallow conversation surrounding branding. And what I really like to walk my people through is like, what is the impact that you are here to have? Who is your audience? And what is going to be better about what they do in their lives or businesses because of you? What is essentially the movement that you're trying to create? What is that
Mm,
bigger picture, right? I think that's a really important question to answer. And then what is your unique approach? So the example I always use here is you can have two different social media educators, right? Because a lot of people are like, I always ask, like, what's unique about you? And a lot of people say, there's nothing unique about me. A million people do what I do. Okay, yes, they probably do, but not in the same way that you do it, right?
Mhm.
So that's where you have to work this out. So if you've got 2 social media educators, technically that would be a title that you could give to me, right?
Mhm.
I'm not teaching how to go viral on TikTok or, like get clickbait hooks or do any of that kind of thing. I'm not talking about, even on the flip side, there's a lot of social media educators who are talking about like manifestation and like how to manifest through your content. I'm talking about how to build your brand, how to get results from your social media, and how to do it in a way that feels good and is effective for you and your audience, right? So, one title can be vastly different in the way it's perceived and presented when you get clear on your unique areas of impact, is what I call them in my programs, like the way that you're going to create that. Then, of course, your story, like the storytelling aspect is really foundational as well. And I think a lot of people get this a little bit confused because they think, oh, I just need to go talk about myself. The
Mhm.
power in your story is what other people see, the parts that other people see themselves in.
Right.
Right? So think autobiographies. I think a lot of us entrepreneurs love that kind of like reading those kinds of books. And it's because we can see ourselves in that journey and it makes us realize what is possible for us, right? So I think those are some of those really big foundations. And once you get, I mean, your brand voice, of course, I could go on, but I feel like those are, kind of the sum of the first place that we start. And then with that, you break it down into the messaging for your specific offers and your content, and it kind of goes from there.
Yeah, I also, you talk about having your foundation, and then when something like a pandemic or the market shifts or there's tariffs all of a sudden, these are very relevant things.
For sure.
You're you have to pivot a little bit, but because you have your solid foundation, I always talk about culture as well in your business, especially if you have a team, a salon, a studio. Culture is huge,
For sure.
and you have your values. If you have these things stable within your company, even if you're a solo entrepreneur or a business, someone that has a team, it's really, really hard to shake you. It's
Yeah.
really, really hard for someone to copy every single thing that you're doing and actually take all of your business.
Right. It's so true. And I think like decision fatigue is so real for
Yeah.
business owners. Like it is such a thing. And so I think that when you have that clarity, like you said, like even a lot of kind of what you were talking about is from an operational standpoint, I do think that you experience a little bit less of that to a degree because you know the answers to a lot of things based on your business foundations. Like you don't
Mhm.
have to think is like you'll know a lot sooner and a lot quicker whether, for example, an opportunity is aligned for your business or,
Right.
whether you should hop on a trend or not.
Mm. 'Kay, you use the word viral.
Mhm.
I feel like everyone wants to go viral. Do you feel like it's actually valuable for a business?
I think that really depends. So, quite simply, I would say like going mega viral, probably not, because once you hit a certain standpoint, the likelihood of you actually being in front of your ideal clients still is getting slimmer,
Mm.
right? So again, I'm going to go back to what I said before. Create for your audience, optimize for the algorithm. Am I trying to get increased reach on every single post that goes out through my agency? Absolutely. Like we're never just like, oh, like we don't want this to reach people. Cause again, it's a free way to get in front of people. Does every single piece of content need to get max reach in order to be valuable? Definitely not. So I think when it comes to virality, like my gut instinct is to say, just stop worrying about it. But the deeper nuance is like, is it great to get in front of more aligned ideal clients, make an impact, build your email list, grow your following, all of those things? It totally can be, but only if that post that goes viral is hyper relevant to what you do.
Right.
Is it helpful to chase virality with content that doesn't actually really like serve your business goals? What a waste of time.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
It's I think it's challenging because, well, like you said, it's something that we need to accept as business owners now. I hear my hairstylist say it all the time, like, "I'm not a comedian. I'm a hairstylist,
Yeah.
and you don't need to be a comedian to be on
No.
Instagram, and I empathize because it is a lot. It is a lot to always have a tripod with you or doing B-roll or, you know, it's one other thing that we have to think about as business owners. So I do I, myself.
Yes, and this is another thing that I think is an issue and why people struggle is because of what you said. The impression is that you need to always be doing this.
Right.
When you sit down to do your bookkeeping, are you trying to do it in between color applications? Are you trying to, oh, I'll squeeze time in at the end of the day or to pay your team or to do any of these like essential business tasks? You're not squeezing those into your time off if you are, trying to remain sane when you're
Right.
running your business. So why are we doing that with our marketing?
Mm,
We know it's required. We know it's a part of growing and building a successful business. And so I think we need to dedicate that same time. If you even spent a few days a month strategically capturing that content, strategically creating, mapping things out, then you wouldn't have to worry about it 90% of the time. I think it's because we get stuck into this like vicious feedback loop where we're on social media so often, we're
right.
thinking about it so often. A little pre-planning goes a long way when it comes to that piece for sure.
Okay, we need to take a little break because, shocker, this podcast is brought to you by my flagship company, Blush, and I need to give a shout out. So, not only does Blush sponsor my lavish lifestyle, it also sponsors this podcast. Shouts. If you know me, you know that I do not play around when it comes to beauty and self care, and that's why Blush is your one stop shop for looking and feeling your best. We genuinely do it all: hair, makeup, nails, massage, tattoo, medi spa. Basically, if it makes you feel like a goddess, we probably offer it. So, whether you're looking for a fresh balayage or a relaxing massage or a little of that I woke up like this glow, we've got the experts to make it happen. Think of it as self care, but with a little extra love, sunshine, and family. And actually, with our most recent expansion, we now have a private gym, physiotherapy, chiropractic services, and a lot more to help your body. So, if you are ready to treat yourself, book an appointment at Blush Artistry because let's be honest, life's too short for bad hair and uneven eyeliner. You can find us at blush-artistry.ca or over on Instagram at blushartistrymua. Back to the episode. You hit the nail on the head. People don't look at social media as marketing, they look at it as something, another task to do. And so, these businesses that have been around pre social media, their marketing was advertising. This is a free platform that we have access to, and we should be utilizing it. So, back in the old days, you'd sit down with a print ad, an
Mhm.
ad designer, and you'd design your ad and you'd create what you want to be in the newspaper.
Right.
We can do the same thing with social media. We just have to almost change your mindset about it, right?
And a lot of age groups too, and I noticed that now, like I'm 36, so I'm not super young. Like I didn't grow up with Instagram on my phone, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I notice even now, like when I am going to check out a new restaurant or if I'm going somewhere, or even like if you see like a billboard for something, the first thing I do is I search it on Instagram
Yeah.
because I want to see the visuals. I want to get a feel for the vibe. And actually, I think it's 82% of Gen Z and millennials use Instagram as a search engine for businesses.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a big thing. So even if you think about how referrals used to work, like referrals used to be like, "Oh, here's my stylist number," and the first time that they would meet you is when they would sit in your chair. Referrals now are, "Here's my hairstylist Instagram handle, go check them out," right?
Hmm.
So regardless of where your top of funnel is, even if it's other places and you're not even focused on going viral, maintaining a branded presence so that when people land on your page, they can see exactly what you do, who it's for and why they should book with you, like what's in it for them. That is like bare minimum, even if you're looking other places. And my friends who run ads, they'll be the first people to tell you ads work a lot better when you've got something organic going on as well.
Mm. So, would you say that the number of followers and like, your most recent post, like let's say your last post was 3 months ago,
Mhm.
and you have 900 followers as a beauty professional, would you say that you genuinely lose credibility with your client?
I don't think that follower count is as important as recency.
Okay.
So I don't think that that's something like if I went to, someone's page or a restaurant, for example, and they didn't have a lot of followers, that wouldn't phase me. I built my entire business behind the chair with 1,000 or even less than 1,000 followers.
Mhm.
However, I do think that like an optimized bio and at least semi-consistent posts. I would say like 3 posts a week is kind of the minimum sweet spot, honestly. But once you're clear on your content plan, that's not that much. Like that's
Mhm.
12 pieces of content a month, to put that in
Mhm.
perspective. Like that is not a whole lot of content, and you certainly don't need to be carrying a tripod around day in day out to create 12 pieces of content a month, right?
Yeah, and B-roll, I mean, it's become so like, B-roll for
Yeah.
anyone who doesn't know is well, what how would you describe B-roll?
So, I just want to add one more thing is
Sure.
the reason that I'm talking about consistency with that piece is because of the feeling that with if someone comes to your page and you haven't posted in a really long time, they're gonna kind of think like, oh, is she still even doing this? Like,
Right.
is this like a dead account? Like, are they even still in business kind of thing? So that's kind of the reason why. Um, B-roll is essentially the way I think of B-roll is like moving photos, essentially, right? Like
Mm.
it's giving visual context, it's giving a visual cue, a visual hook in a lot of circumstances. And so I think B roll is definitely one of the easiest pieces of content to create. And you can use it for all kinds of stuff. One of my current favorite types of content using B roll is voiceover vlog style. So
Mm.
if you're a salon owner listening and you're like, oh, like I don't even know, like I don't have any ideas, like do a day in the life of a salon owner in your city. Cause that way you're saying it's a salon, you're appealing to your local people because they're gonna get nosy. People wanna see what's going on behind the scenes, right? So it's kind of a low lift way to create content. And that's another thing is like you also with the increase in searchability, you really want to make sure if you're a local business that you are utilizing that local language.
Right. So, because I think that someone as a salon owner would say,
Mhm.
"So what am I supposed to carry a tripod around with me and have a selfie stick the whole time?" Like, what would you say is actually the best way to record that day in the life?
Right. So I would just take like a clip I mean, if you think about how many clips you actually need, and
Right.
again, this is something where it's like, I recommend that you do this on focused days, not
Yeah.
that you're trying to fit this into your busiest day behind the chair, right?
Mhm.
So, if you have a team, I also recommend that you get them on board. Like,
Mhm.
do a content day. You know what I mean? If that's something where, especially if you have people who aren't super willing, so you could do something like, set your phone up on the front desk. We're talking 2-second clips here,
Yeah.
and open the door. You
Yeah.
could, it doesn't even have to have your face in it necessarily. If your voice is in it, especially, you can do like every hair salon has a ton of mirrors. Like
Mhm.
film yourself walking past a mirror for 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Film yourself making yourself a coffee at the Keurig. Do a pen image of the salon when it's busy. Like these clips are like we're not doing a full-on production here. It's really just if you take 10 clips throughout your day, it might take you 5 minutes
Yeah.
of your whole day. It's really getting into the habit and the systems.
What about when someone does B-roll, but it isn't relevant to their company? So I'll give you an example. Let's say on my consulting page, I wanted to talk about ignoring your competition. I'm not sure. Anyways, an example, ignoring your competition, but I take a video of me walking my dog. Do you think that
Mhm.
having those two different like the message is very different than the video? Do you think that that's okay from a content point of view?
So I do think that there are times that it can work. And I feel as though, like, especially if you were tying it back to like, that could really be something about like the importance of like taking care of yourself and all of those
Right.
things. So I feel like when possible, I kind of have two views on this. If you're someone who is working, consulting is a little bit different because obviously the the visual for consulting is not as obvious, right? And,
Right.
and you are kind of your brand to an
Sure.
extent. If we're talking to like a beauty business owner, I would say like Yes, if you're talking about kind of something a little bit more personal or you're tying something in, then totally use B-roll of that. Um, but the hair salon and like the hair things can really like give a visual hook.
Yeah.
With that being said, like if you were to use like animals and all of that kind of stuff, if you were to have a video of you walking your dog, I feel like you could absolutely incorporate that into your page as it's a part of who you are. Um, and so it's kind of a nuanced answer and it's kind of dependent on the piece
Yeah.
of content.
Yeah. Well, and I think with marketing and branding and social media and content and all of that, it is very dependent on the company that is posting and creating it.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah. With personal brands, you definitely have a little bit more leeway for
sure.
sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Because it's a you're going to be working with this like yourself, you're working with me. Here's me on my vacation and things like
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Exactly, and, like, I have like, I posted a vlog style piece of content the other day, and it was, like, me, like, twirling my suitcase at the airport and all that kinda stuff. So there was, like, a couple clips of me teaching and all of those types of things, but it's definitely not as, literal, I guess, when it comes
Right.
to that. Having said that, there is, really great B-roll opportunities for educators and for, like, speakers and is that b-roll of you on stage or of you teaching the class or all of those things. So a nice mix is perfect. With consulting, you've got lots of wiggle room.
Yeah. I mean, this is my show, but it's about the listeners anyway. So what
Yeah.
this episode has been amazing. It's been so valuable, Jody. I think that we could talk about this topic all day long.
100%.
Um, but we'll leave it here, and I'd like to have you back on the show. Before at the end of every episode, I like to give our listeners a couple how to's. And I think that with social media, you just covered a couple with like B-roll, but do you have any that they could take away, maybe implement into their daily business, something like that?
Yes. Okay. So the first one I want to give you is I hope a light at the end of the tunnel. Once you do the foundational work of creating your content plan based on your brand, repetition is your best friend. Repetition equals reputation. That is something that I really like to heavily um, impart on the people that I work with because people are so scared of repeating themselves. Even stylists are like, I posted this hair photo, 6 months ago. Nobody remembers.
Yeah.
Trust me. Trust and believe, not a
Yeah.
single person remembers. And so I think that repetition and so say you have a spoken word reel and you're talking about, either, your favorite product or something like that, go ahead and repurpose that into a carousel. If you've written a long caption, repurpose that into a voiceover over top of B-roll. Don't be afraid to revisit topics consistently because that is how you are going to build your brand and build recognition. So that's a really big one. The second one is I'm going to repeat this again. It's really important. And I hope that if you take anything away from this episode, it's this: create for your audience, optimize for the algorithm. And a lot of the stuff you'll see, it all works,
Mhm.
right? It's the problem I think people get into is when they try to like patchwork a million different things together and then they end up overwhelmed and stressed out and closing the Instagram app and just feeling really, really frustrated having posted nothing at all. And
Mhm.
so I think consume less and create more. And I like to tell people, and this is something I do too, is on the day that I'm going to create stuff, I try not to go on social in the morning,
Mm.
right? Because when you're consuming, it kind of takes you out of that flow state. There's a concept from the Artist's Way, and it's called like morning pages. And I kind of like filter this into my creation process a little bit because it is a creative process. We
Sure.
are creating, we are creative people, right, in this industry.
Mhm.
And so if you can, do your learning and do your consuming and even your planning, jot down some ideas. Then when you wake up and you do your creation day, your mind is going to be a lot more clear and you're going to be able to focus and be more efficient and bring forward your own voice, not the last reel you watched on Instagram.
Oh, that's Jody, hands off, man.
That's a good one.
That is such great advice. I also think I'm going to add this one other takeaway. Working with you for my education and consulting business has been so enlightening. When you talk about areas of impact, you're talking about talking to your audience. I think a lot of us business owners don't know who our audience is. And so they need to figure that out, hire a mentor, hire a coach, because just talking in chat TTP is not enough sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's especially for that, you know, it's such a personal thing. Who are your people that you want to spend your days with?
1,000%. And I think ChatGPT is a great tool. It's a great assistant, but people put a lot too much emphasis on the intelligence piece and not enough emphasis on
Mhm.
the artificial piece.
Mm,
Because just because it can spit something out that sounds coherent and sounds legit, you need to have enough expertise to know if it's right,
totally. Oh,
right?
100%. And it's not always right. It's not
No,
always and it's not always correct.
it's not.
Um,
Um,
yeah.
The third one too that I just want to throw in because I do think this is getting more and more important if we're wanting to, think about social is identify if you have a skill gap and then be okay with learning that skill. Like, if you're struggling to take a great hair photo, like it's not going to take forever. It's not going to be something that you have to be learning for the rest of your life. Put in the time, check off that skill. If you're
Yeah.
struggling to plan your content or you don't know, like you said, source out someone who can teach you that
Mhm.
because like that I think is one of the things that's a little bit underrated that we don't talk about enough is that a lot of stylists and salon owners, and I actually just taught a class in California about, social media and I taught it in a salon. And it was really interesting to see the amount of pressure and even a lot of people who are coming into the industry who are in their 20s because they know how to use the app, like how to, create the content and how to actually put it out there. I think they're putting a lot of pressure on themselves to be like, well, I'm not getting clients from it. Why am I not getting clients from it? And it's like, go back and learn some of those fundamentals.
Right.
It's not a whole lot, but it is really impactful and really game changing. So
Mhm.
I just wanted to add that in.
I love that. I just recently read a book, and then we'll let our listeners go, but it's called Who Not How.
Mm,
And I embody a lot of that even before I read the book, but it just solidified things. So I don't know how to produce a podcast. So I
right,
hire someone to help me with that. I
right,
can talk to you all day long, Jodie. That's what I do.
right.
I love this. So I'm going to focus my energy on creating great content and things that our listeners can take away. And I'm going to let someone else do the editing and the visual and the splicing and the chords. That's not my jam. And it's amazing
Totally.
how much lighter you feel once you've relieved yourself of those tasks.
Oh, it's 100%. And that's where honestly a lot of our agency clients come from is because it's not people who are like, I have no idea. Like it's often people who are like, even like sometimes it is a little bit, but often too, it's people who are like, I know that if I hand off this task, I can focus my attention on things that are going to grow my business instead of
Hmm.
maintain it. Right. So I think there's so many different reasons. And I've heard about that books from several of my clients actually. So I'm definitely
Yeah.
going to give that a read.
Yeah. Jody, it was a pleasure spending this past 40 minutes with you. Where can our listeners find you? Is there anything you want to give them today?
Yeah, so you can definitely go and I would recommend go listen to the Visionary Rising podcast. I go really in depth on a lot of the things that we talked about today. So, for example, I have an entire episode about market sophistication, how to apply that to your business, as well as, writing sales pages, like basically all things marketing. I totally nerd out on that over on my podcast. And I would also love to connect with you on Instagram. You can find me at It's Jody Brown and send me a DM. Let me know what you thought of this episode.
And she answers her DMs.
I
Which
do.
is
I do.
which is
I
great. Yeah.
try.
It's not just an automated message. No,
Yeah.
you're wonderful. Thank you so much for having or spending your time with us today. I will talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for having me, friend.
All right, another episode bites the dust. If you loved this conversation as much as I did, don't forget to hit follow, leave a review, or even send it to a friend you think would enjoy it. And because I like to keep things fun, we're always running giveaways with our amazing guests. So make sure to check with the show notes, our Instagram page, get in on the details on how to get the free stuff because it's free and fun. And who doesn't like that? Another little disclaimer, while I love sharing advice and business wisdom, I am not your lawyer, I'm not your accountant, and I'm not your fairy godmother. If you do want to be best friends, though, you can hit me up. Everything on this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only, so no lawsuits, okay? Thank you for hanging out with me today. If you'd like to hang out more, you can find me on Instagram at I am Heather Dick and at the Expansion Code. And all of our free resources and consulting packages are on the website, www.theexpansioncode.ca. I appreciate you being here more than you know. I will see you next time.